we're all here to show each other the way to remember who we truly are. And that, Ana,
Indeed.
Cecilia, and Francisco, for me, started when I was just a little child, like you just said it. I was only 2 years old when I had a very traumatic and tragic accident that brought me to die.
Hello, hello, welcome everybody to one more episode in Dying I Began to Live. My name is Ana Cecilia Gonzalez.
Francisco Valentin.
Ingrid, Honkala.
Thank you very much for being around with us. You've been with us for several episodes, and as you've seen, you've got to know us, Francisco and me, in both languages, Spanish and English. And this time is one more time we're going to hear about Ingrid's story. So I'm really, really grateful for all your comments, for engaging with us, and for following us. Please share all of this because we know we're going to expand and we're going to make this a beautiful way to raise awareness. So this time we're going to have Ingrid to tell her story. Let us get to know everything about her since she was a little girl, and let us get to know all of the miracles that have been happening in her life. So, Ingrid, in English now, please let us know and let us get to know you much better. Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ana Ceci, and thank you, Francisco. This is just the fact that I can share this space with you and with all these incredible followers, these incredible, oh my gosh, everybody hearing these experiences. And we're all here to show each other the way to remember who we truly are. And that, Ana
Indeed.
Cecilia and Francisco, for me, started when I was just a little child, like you just said it. I was only 2 years old when I had a very traumatic and tragic accident that brought me to die. What happened was that I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and my parents would leave very early in the morning. I would leave us at the care of a maid. And this was a lady that really didn't pay attention to us when my parents were not around. And my sister, she was close to 4 years old. I was close to three. And we realized no one is watching. So we went to the back of the house where there was a big patio. And in the corner of this patio, there was a tank. And this tank, the purpose was just to store water. It was a big, big place for storage and also for hand washing clothes when it was needed. And then, knowing that nobody was watching, we found a ball and decided, let's play cash across the tank. And this was a place where we were asked not to be, but being children is like, oh, no one is watching, let's play where we don't supposed to be playing. And then
Let's
we
do the opposite.
you're always going to do what they tell you not to do, especially when you're little one.
Mm.
That makes it more interesting, more fun. And then we climbed the walls of the tank. It was, like I said, it was a big tank. It held about 900 gallons of water. And then we climbed the walls. My sister sat in the flat surface that was used for scrubbing. And I went on the other side where there was like a thin wall. And then I bended my legs and I was kind of leaning very precariously in the tank. And my sister threw the ball, but she didn't apply enough force. And then what I did was like, I leaned forward because I thought, oh, of course I can grab the ball. And I didn't know that the ball was going to roll. And the moment I touched it, it rolled. I lost my balance and I fell in the tank. So imagine the first feeling when I fell in this tank. Of course, first is that the impact of losing your balance. And then when I touch the water, people have the misconception that because I was born in Bogota, I come from, or in Colombia, I come from hot weather country. But the thing is that Bogota's located high up in the Andes. So up there, the temperature is pretty cold. I think at the moment, probably the water in this tank was 30 or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And then, so the first feeling was this water was frigid cold. And then came the realization of the one that, of course, frightened me the most was why I cannot breathe. I have never been underwater. I had never I'd never been in a pool or in a bathtub, so I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. So at that moment, I enter in this state of absolute panic, and that's when I would just say, like, the miracle happened. It was when I was in that terror, and suddenly, absolutely everything went quiet. And it was going from that state of absolute horror to complete and total peace and serenity and calmness. I didn't know what happened. All I knew is that suddenly I was like desperate, or I was desperate to come out of this tank, and suddenly I was relief. I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't need to breathe anymore. I didn't have to escape out of this space. And I just found myself in absolute and total peace. And people always ask me, how can I remember this if I was so young? And the reason I can remember is because I always mention the word contrast. There was a lot of contrast. And what does this mean? Um, First, I have to say that this space was a very dark space. This was a tank. It was made completely out of cement, and it was early in the morning. There was a roof in this tank. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open, the moment that I entered into that space of calmness, from that terror to that calmness, there was darkness. So everything was dark. And when I went into that absolute peace, the first thing I saw was light. And the light was coming from below. And this light was able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. And then imagine, it was this feeling of like, now there is light. The other thing that happened is that um I was born in a house that was there was a lot of noise. I had my sisters and my cousins live next door, and we have a dog and birds, and there was always noise, music. And the last thing I heard was also in that moment of panic, and I was in such terror that my heart was pounding in my chest like a big drum. So the last thing I heard was my heart pounding in my head like a drum. And then suddenly, that silence, it was so profound that I call it the silence behind the silence. So it was a silence that came with like an enormous, enormous peace. And look, let me tell you guys, I this silence was so incredible that even after the experience, I crave that silence. And I wanted to find that silence, and I will hide under the bed, under the covers. I will later in chapels and in a closet, anywhere, because I wanted that silence back. And it took many, many, many years to understand that that silence was not something that I could find out there. It was an inner silence. But again, that was something I discovered many years later. So for many years, I craved that silence and I wanted it back. But now I am in this silence. I am in the light. I am in this peace. I am just, I don't have to do anything or go anywhere. And then suddenly I started to see bubbles, and the bubbles were surrounded by light. And at that moment that I see bubbles, imagine with that childlike feeling like, wow, there's bubbles. And then I started to chase these bubbles. And it was by chasing these bubbles that I turned around. And it's when I saw my body. And my body was just there, suspended in the water. And it didn't really shock me. It was more the sense of like, oh, that's my body. But I wasn't afraid. It was more, I think I experienced the sense of familiarity. Like, oh, this is normal. That's my body. But the thing that I would say that shocked me and that I could never really erase from my mind was that I saw the eyes open. And the
Yes,
eyes, you know how we say that the eyes are like the mirror of the
of
soul.
your soul. Yeah.
Yeah, that moment
Yeah.
when I saw the eyes felt empty. It was
Okay.
like nothing was there. And I think that was the thing that shocked me. Like, maybe I could just say nowadays it's the realization or the feeling that the body is just a costume, just a shell. And that there was emptiness there. And that was an image I could never erase from my mind. Now comes the other contrast. I was born as a very sick child, and I spent almost those 3 years of my life feeling unwell. I didn't know how it was to feel anything else. And now this is the other thing. I was in the state of absolute well being. And being in this state of well being, imagine, made me feel like when I look at the body, I'm like, I'm not going back there. I knew I didn't want to be in that body that didn't feel well. And the thing I did was that I turned around and I left the body behind. And then when I leave the body behind, I started to see flowers, and the flowers were blooming from nowhere. And it was by connecting with these flowers. This is the other thing. I mean, even the sense of dimension at that moment had to disappear, because it was like I was like I was like, imagine, this is funny because the flowers had to be so big to pick me up. And at that moment, the flowers picked me up and I was being carried. And everything was, I have to say, everything was dark, but I was being carried like in a forward direction, and I could see light. And then I was in the state of, oh, just joy, just bliss. Imagine, and I even have the picture, of me like lying like, with the like this feeling like when you just kind of launching, like lying in complete just calmness and serenity. And then I was in this state when suddenly, in just a blink, I appear in the maid's room, and she was there just listening to soap operas in the radio. And let me tell you, this experience is so clear in my mind that even through the years later on, when I was sharing this experience with my mom, with my family, I mentioned exactly the soap opera that she was listening in the radio. And we were able to validate that in that time during those years and everything, that soap opera was playing in the radio. So that was amazing because I even had that memory of what she was listening.
Wow.
So this is incredible when people ask, "Oh, how clear are these experiences?" That clear,
Yes.
and it's like the memory is like it gets. It's almost like a recording. Is that impactful in the mind that it just never gets erased. And I think that you, Anna, and Francisco have experienced the same thing. Like this, probably one of my most clear memories is when these experiences have happened.
Yes.
And then it comes the other thing, and it was that since nothing happened with the maid, in another flash like that, I appear in my mom's path. My mom uh, was walking, she didn't have a car, and she was close to her boss's stop. And then her boss's stop, I would just say, was about, wow, she had to walk maybe about 10 minutes to get to her boss's stop. And when I appear above her, I have to probably give a little bit of a background story here because my mom had got those days a new job. And then imagine what would be the urgency to show up for your first day of work. I mean, like, come on, that's what was in her mind. And suddenly, when I appear above her, same thing like in the maid's room, I was kind of floating above, and I was floating above her. And then at that moment, I said, "Oh, that's mom." And guys, when I said these words, my mom stopped. She did not give another step. She knew that something was happening at home with one of her daughters. And
Wow.
she, at that moment, she turned around and started to run home. And then when she's running home, I am looking at her and I just was wondering, oh, I wonder why she's running. And I have to say two things about my mom. One that she had like an incredible intuition. But the second thing that she listened to that intuition. Then my mom now is running and I'm just looking at her. And then I got distracted because at the end of the, oh, yes, Anna.
Yeah, I have a question here, Ingrid. For example, when you're saying like there's mommy, do you see yourself like in that realm? You were a little girl. Were you? How was it? Because this is something I've always been intrigued. When somebody has these kind of experiences, you saw yourself as a little girl in that moment. Like how? What was your state of awareness, or how do you see yourself? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
No, yes, yes, Anna. But you know what? At that moment, I am not really thinking about me as anything. I'm
Right.
not thinking
Okay.
of me as a child. I'm not thinking. And also remember, I was close to 3 years old. So I am not really holding a picture of who I am. I am just having fun.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
just you.
like,
Okay.
I'm there and I am not, but later I will have a different kind of realization throughout the experience. But at this moment, I am not having of an awareness of who I am. Or I am not asking myself why this is happening or where I'm just feeling enormously happy. Well, I just realized, whoa, I am floating in the maid's room and I'm like, whoa, that's Maria. And everything is happening very fast. This is not like, maybe as I am telling it, it sounds like It's like,
Slowly, but everything's right, right.
yeah. So I just say, imagine I feel the sense of amazing wellness, peace, and from there I see light, and from there I feel the silence, and from there I see the bubble. So everything is happening
Fast.
fast.
Okay, I know Francisco wanted to say something.
Yes, I have a different question. Mine is, have you talked to your mother about what she thought in that moment when she made a stop and turn around?
Yes, yes, and of course, same thing, Francisco and Ana Ceci. It took many years to even have these
Yeah.
conversations, or to realize what happened. That back then, imagine early 70s, nobody understood anything about. There was not even any word. Nobody knew there about near their experiences. None of this. So nobody really understood what happened. Years later, when I was able to now tell my mom, "Hey, mom, when I drown even using the word drowning, like even say, mom, when I drown, I saw you. When I drown, and I saw the maid, and she was listening this in the radio, like, how could you have known that she's listening this in the radio?" And I said, "But mom, after that I saw you, and you were walking, and you were close to your bus stop." So this is great, because Francisco and Ana Ceci, this validates that
Yes, totally, totally.
what was happening.
But
And then
did she tell you what she thought?
she
Did
said
she tell
that
you what she thought?
she felt like a call, an inner call, like an enormous state of urgency. Like, I have to say, my mom had an incredible intuition, like I was mentioning, but the most important of all is that she listened to that intuition.
Yes.
So what she felt, Francisco, was like an inner call, like that inner voice that said, "You have to go back home." And she knew exactly that it was something that was happening with one of her daughters.
Oh,
And
wow.
otherwise, I don't think she'll turn around, because again, she was had to go to that new job. So I think the sense of urgency had to be such that it made her go, and it knew it was one of us. She exactly knew. So yeah, I mean, talking about this later, with this is the incredible thing, is just validating that all this really happened, because for many
Yes.
years it was in my mind, like, you always think, did I really see this? Did I really see did I really see my mom? Was this real? And yeah, it was like, and also that detail about knowing exactly the soap opera that the maid was listening, and then later verifying that this was actually truth. So when I am looking at my mom running, at the end of the street, I see a dog. And then I got distracted by the dog. And then at that moment, I forgot all about my mom. But I even I even remember thinking, like, why my mom is running? And then is when the moment I think that I want to be with the dog, I am with the dog.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
And then I just was surprised, like, so I saw a park, and the moment I feel the desire to be in the park, I am in the park. So now I'm like, whoa. So it's like the realization that wherever I put my mind, whatever desire I had, I could do it. So I started to play this game of going places. So imagine everything we knew about time and space completely changed.
Was
And
gone.
oh yeah, gone, and I was having so much fun. And when this was happening again in another flash, everything is really
Everything
happening
is very fast.
fast. And then at that moment, I entered in a realm that was made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light, bright white light. And at that moment, imagine if when I drowned, I felt the sense of peace. This was like a tenfold peace. It was like, But now this peace, this deeper peace came with the sense of feeling at home. It was for the first time in my almost 3 years of life, I felt the sense that I was home. So it wasn't just peaceful, it was embracing. It was like, ah, like, when you're at home after being so tired, say after a day of work, or when you just, I don't know, been doing things or whatever it is, and you come back home and you feel welcome and embraced and warm, and it was so familiar. I mean, I have to say, what is home? What feels familiar? What feels just incredibly, incredibly good.
and peaceful.
Yeah, so that's how I felt. And something else happened. And I remember Francisco mentioning this when he was sharing his experience. And now answer a little bit of your question, Anna. And it's like, this is the moment when that part of, let's call it conscious awareness, started to happen. Because although I had seen my body in the water, I had seen the eyes and everything else, I don't know. Up to this point, I didn't have the awareness of who I was. Like I mentioned before, I wasn't thinking about that. And now, when I enter into this light, it's when I realize, oh, yes, I am not that body.
Yes.
And of course, if I am not that body, if I am not that, then what is it that I am? I didn't question that at that moment either. I just knew that I was. It was the sense of self. It was the sense of like, yeah, I am not that body, but I am what I was at that moment. I don't know what I was, but I was a being. But it's when I had the realization, I am a being of light. And when I realized myself as light, as a being of light, I started to feel the sense that I was not just a being, but I was interconnected. I felt the sense of connection. It was the sense of dissolving. It's really hard to explain, and becoming part of the whole. And I am going to say that at the beginning, I have the sense of self. I am, I am a being, or like I am something. But even this sense of self in my experience started to dissolve. And I experienced what I call nothingness. But when I reach to this point, people get afraid. They're like, oh, what is this nothingness thing? I don't want to go and be nothing. And I said, no, 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 wait a minute. It's beautiful because it's so to explain this, since I have never found words to explain it, I have to give an analogy. And so I said, imagine that there is an stadium, huge stadium. And in the middle of the stadium, there's a little tiny box. And this little box is or contains everything you think you were. Like, I thought that I was that little box, that container. And suddenly that box opened. And I call it nothing because it's nothing that I thought I was. But at the same time, is wholeness. See, it's like you go from being the little box to realize I am this totality. See, Ana, dime.
I have a question. So all of this, how much time did it take you to really put in words? Because I know this is a moment that a very flash, but it took you, I imagine, years to get to understand everything you're going through. And what happened later as a girl when you had all this experience? Because I know it took me many years to be able to talk about it. But how much time did it take you, and how was it? Well, you couldn't even understand everything that you're telling us.
Wow, Ana Ceci, I have to tell you that to integrate this
Sorry.
experience and to understand it, integrate it, and like even we have to talk even in terms of like including it, making sense of the whole thing took many
Yeah,
many years,
yeah.
many years. I said that, sometimes when I tell my stories, people say, oh, I wish I would have a near that experience, and I bet that happened to you both too. Oh, I want to have a near that experience, and I said, no, you don't, you don't.
Excellent.
Because, and I have heard it in even in now in the scientific studies about this, that it says that it takes for I think it takes for an adult between 10 and 20 years to integrate these experiences. And for a child, it can take between each 30 and 40 years. See, Francisco?
Yes, let me clarify for the audience. When you say no, that you don't want to have that experience, is because it impact you so much, but it's a beautiful experience. I mean, for the
Amazing.
listener, don't take it as a bad experience, because it's so beautiful that actually the fact is that it is impossible to explain. Because, for
Yeah.
example, when you said peace, I say the same thing, and Cecilia says the same thing, and I've heard it everywhere. It's a peace that you cannot describe, and as you describe it, no matter what description you give it, it falls short,
It's
because
never enough.
it is a peace so amazing that does not belong to this earthly plane. And the feeling of of wholeness, of not being able to identify with yourself, is so amazingly gratifying. But the problem is trying to explain it to people, because
Yeah.
people cannot understand it unless they go through the experience.
Exactly.
So it's a positive thing, but a negative thing if you don't know how to handle it. And yes, indeed, it took me also many years to be able to grasp it and understand it. So
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important, Francisco, because that's why I was asking Ingrid, tell us about your childhood, because I'm sure she never talked about all of this during many years. So, what can people expect after all this happens, Ingrid? What went on with your childhood? I don't know if I mean, I'm sure you're gonna get there, but this is something that people must understand. It not only takes a lot, but your whole life, it's difficult to cope when you're a little girl.
Yes, yes, and I will
Yes.
get there, Anna. That way, let me. I will finish the
Yes,
experience
yes, yes.
first. But yeah, easy. It was not easy at all.
No,
Not easy at all. And also we will talk a little bit more, and I'm sure in other episodes we will talk a lot about how it's possible to also experience the deep sense of connection, and discovering your true self and going to these spaces of peace without having to die. Because
right.
there's a lot of trauma involved, like Francisco said, in dying or harming your body, especially
Cope.
when you have to come back and then deal with the body, the mind, the psyche, and everything else. So yeah, so imagine at this moment, I
Yeah,
am in this.
it's more. I'm sorry. It's more dealing with the people than with yourself, because people don't understand you, and you have to
Exactly.
Yes,
just shut up and trying
yeah,
to
For
deal
many
with it
years.
on your own.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're alone and you become isolated. But so that was when I come go and tell you the hardships of growing up like this is, especially imagine if it's hard when you, that's why it's hard to integrate when you're an adult, nobody understand. Imagine when you're a child,
I
and
know,
imagine
that's why
when
I'm
you're a
asking.
child and you're 2 years
Yes.
old and you don't have the language.
Exactly, Ingrid. That's what I'm. Wow,
Yeah.
wow. It's amazing.
So this was very difficult, and now I am like now even goes deeper, because now I am in this state of wholeness, now definitely Francisco and Anastasia, there are no even words to explain this part. That's why I have to give the analogy of the stadium, because
Yeah, that's a
how
good
can
one.
you convey what nothing means? A state of, but at the same time, complete wholeness and complete interconnectedness. And this is the other thing I can say, the only words I can use to describe this part of the experience is pure consciousness and just the sense of absolute presence. And again, to get to these words took me 50 years.
There you go.
And then, if I can use some words that describe an emotion, an emotional state, absolute bliss,
Yeah,
bliss. Anna, I think Anna, you have another word that you use. I don't know.
plentiful. Thank
Plentiful. Yeah, I like that word, Anna, because it's plentiful bliss. And later we'll talk more about this, but like when you mentioned how long it took me and how, that's why channels like this are so important, because when I tell my experience, other people will say, "Oh, that happened to me. That's how it was for me." When I listen people like Francisco and many others, and read many books and had many teachers and did many other things and meditations and stuff, it was like, "Oh, that's how I felt. That's how it happened. Oh, that's the word I can use. Oh, that's the other thing." Otherwise, I don't know how I would have been able to put it all together. It's like a puzzle. You need many, many years to put this picture together and be able to articulate and talk about it.
right.
But when I was in this state of bliss, my mom, because now you're wondering what happened, who rescued you, how you're alive, my mom arrived home.
Oh, right. Yes.
And yeah, and this is the other incredible thing. He knew it wasn't just the intuition of knowing that something was happening, but she knew exactly where to go in the house. And she didn't waste time going to other bedrooms, nothing. She went directly to the back of the house. And then, being there, she saw my sister. My sister, like I mentioned, she was very little. People asked me why she didn't go to the maid, and why, I guess what I mentioned at the beginning, we did not supposed to be playing in this tank. So we were not going, she wasn't going to go tell her and get yelled at. So as a little child, all she thought is like, how can I get my sister out of the water? She could have fallen too. She was very, very little. And then she told my mom, "Mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her." My mom went in the water, she pulled me out, and she said that I was like a raggedy doll. No pulse, no breathing, completely
Oh,
pale, the lips, the
wow.
fingers blue. And then my mom started to do anything she knew to revive me. This is another amazing, let's call it synchronicity. My mom was a teacher for children, and she had been trained to do CPR for children. Whatever she knew, whatever they taught her, she was using it at that moment.
Wow.
But let me tell you, I was so and totally, completely disconnected from this reality, from this body, that I did not feel anything she was doing,
Yeah.
nothing at all. And
You were
the
not there.
only,
You were not there.
I wasn't, no, nothing. Like I said to you, when I saw the body, it was empty.
Yeah, it was not. You were not there.
And then
Mhm.
when the feeling was like suddenly I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. Why I said that? Because the feeling was, and because I had experienced this, like when you're in the amusement park or something and you jump from, or you like, you go into this empty space, it's just the feeling of like, and then in that feeling was like the sense of being pulled, like being sucked back, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Why do I say this? Because I resisted. I was like, no. And I felt the sense of being pulled, like there's nothing I could do to
I
stop
don't want to
this.
go back.
Yes. And then and I always like, because it's the same thing for you guys when you tell the stories, like, no, why are you bringing me back?
I don't want
And
to be in this body.
I knew I was back in the body where the sense of cold and sickness again, because again, I'm telling you, I was almost, I suffered from respiratory problems. I was born very sick. And then for all those years, I was sick. And I've been in this absolute well being. And now I feel the feeling of the body. And not just that, but with the analogy of the little box, imagine I went to full expansive state of being. And now back in the box. So I had to be angry, of course. And the other thing is like when people say, "Oh, but you should be grateful. I mean, your mom brought you back. How can you be angry?" I said, "Wait a minute. I'm going to give you another analogy. Imagine that you're a child and you're in an amusement park and you're having the fun of the world. And suddenly your parents said, 'Oh, we have to go home.'
Let's go.
You are going. Oh, you have seen the children. You cry. I don't want to go. I don't want to go.
You're in a tantrum.
I
No.
was, yeah. So I was very angry and I did not want to be here. But that tantrum and Cecilia and Francisco lasted for many years
Yeah,
because I did
I
not
know.
want to be here. And then when I came back and now I start answering your question and how I felt horribly. And I refused to eat and I didn't want to be here. And being a child, my parents didn't know what was happening to this child. And this is the other thing. I clearly came with an awareness I didn't have before. Why do I say this? Because when I came back, I remember like feeling the sense of my parents as like, these are not just my parents. I felt them as my equal because I had experienced that sense of oneness. Remember, I said I was
Yes,
interconnected
yes.
with everything. Now I look at them and I'm like, why do I have to listen to these people?
Wow.
The other thing, I had the complete clarity I am not this body. And not just I'm not this body, but I am not a child. And then I was never able to feel like a child again. So imagine how it is to experience these things. And when I would look at other children, I would be so disappointed, like what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. So I could not relate to people. I could not relate to my persona. I would look at myself in the mirror and come to my mom crying. And I will almost like scratch my face. I said, "You don't understand. This is not me. This
Can
is
I
not."
show your little pictures? I imagine one of those like that.
Oh yeah, Ayana. Yeah, yeah. Let's share. So look, that is me before and after. Before it was just the girl that was just a
Wow.
normal 2 year old. And
I
when I
can see
came
an
back,
angry child. I don't want to go. I don't want to be here.
I
yeah.
love this picture because it shows exactly what you're talking about.
And look at the expression in my eyes. Now
Yes.
I was disappointed. I just didn't want to be here. So this picture, I love it because it shows the clear expression of before. It's almost
Right.
like seeing two different children. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And there was more things
Actually,
that,
if you pay close attention, if
see,
you know,
Francisco.
if you pay close attention if you pay close attention to those image, you can see the little girl with the innocence in her eyes and expressions, and then you see a girl that is way much mature.
A grown up. Yes, yes.
One
A
is
grown up.
innocent, and the other one you don't see that innocence. I can see
Right.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it
Wow,
gives me the
Ingrid.
chills, Francisco, because it was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And I would just go with that awareness, with like, I'm not a child. Because, is when I had the clarity over time, like that I was an eternal being, that this was not the first time I've been here. Again, I didn't understand and know all that at that moment, but as I gain understanding, and later when I started to have memories of past life experiences, and it was a realization, this is just a shell, this is just, Ingrid is just a parenthesis in the eternity of my soul. So imagine, physically, yes, I was a child, but I was already an old soul, like we most of us are. So I love that you caught that, Francisco, because that was the feeling I had. I'm not a child, and I never felt like a child again.
And it showed it clearly. That picture shows it perfect. Yeah.
Yes, and this is the other thing to even validate even what was happening to me, is that I also started to show pretty fast, like an evolution of the intelligence, the mind. It was like I was just about to be 3 years old, and no long after this, I could read, I could write, I can develop mathematical problems, I can put together complex puzzles. So I can paint. And even it started to have a language that was a little bit more elaborated. So how is this possible? And
Wow.
this it started to develop more and more and more, to the point that couple of years later, when I went into the kindergarten and in the school, there was no programs for children like me.
Special.
I will be what is called like a genius, and then they will put me in a corner. So like Francisco's saying, like, this is amazing how there's many blessings but many burdens at the same time, because I was considered as different, as like a weird. And even the teachers, they said, if you know every, because I wanted to know, I was very inquisitive and I would ask questions, and I had knowledge. So when sometimes they would say something, and say, no, that's not like that. So they would say, if you know everything, you go to that corner, and they would just not so I was not just at some point bullied by other the children, but the teachers too.
The adults. Wow.
So that was a very, very, very difficult growing up like this. And I have to say that people ask me, my parents, what did they do if they took me to psychology, what did things happen, blah. And I say, thankfully, back then Colombia was a country that was going through really hard times. It was a country at war, many hardships. My parents were busy dealing with two. At the time, we were three. Later, my other sister came, but happened. But we were at the moment three little children. They thought she will get better. And the way things happen for me, and being so little, is that when I was in the most difficult moment, is when I started to experience what we know today as out of body experiences.
Yeah.
So they every time I went to sleep, I will go back to what I call the realm of the light. Or go back to that white, bright, intense home space. And it did not come that easy. Every time I will close my eyes at the beginning, it was scary, because I will go through a series of, it's like the scenery. It was like colors I've never seen in this. How can you how can you explain a color you've never seen here? It's very hard, but I've seen colors I've never seen here. I've movements, changes in frequency. They will go really fast and very slow. It was pretty shocking. And sounds, oh gosh, some of the sounds were pretty scary. But all of these will bring me back to that realm of the light. So at the beginning, I did not like all those feelings, but I would love to be back in the realm of the light. Siana.
Ingrid, would you say that you were depressed? Were there a moment that when you were like diagnosed or something like a depressed child? Were you in a depression mode and that brought you back? Was it because I must imagine that after this bullying, without even them wanting to do it that way, but it was like that, did you enter into a moment of depression?
And as I say at the beginning, I cannot. There was not diagnostic or anything, but I also this happened after my near death, so I was not at a school or anything yet. But I was definitely. I would just say that the diagnosis I got later in my life was what is called existential depression, because I
Oh,
had it for the rest of my life. So
oh
I
wow.
was a depressed person for many, many years. So at some point of my life, I was also suicidal because I just, it was hard to be here. So that's why I said that thankfully, having these out of body experiences and what happened after, gaining access to communicate with beings of light, was what saved my life and kept me here. Because every time I went to sleep, so this happened right after my near death experience. The when I drowned, I would just go asleep and go back to that place. So what happened, Anna, is that because I didn't want to be here, I started to sleep a lot.
Yeah,
But we got a new maid. Of course, my parents told that lady to leave, and then we got a new one. But hey, if a child is sleeping and you don't have to take care of the child,
perfect.
that's good. And there's another two because we were three. That one is, oh, one less to deal with, and she will let me sleep forever. So I would just go through these long, long hours of sleeping, but I was just there. And then, but now it reached the point that, of course, I cannot be the girl that is left forever, no? But what happened is that in one of these journeys, when I was going to the realm of the light one day, I was surrounded by lights that were shining in all different colors. Imagine like looking at the stars at night and the whole sky full of stars, but this was all white with lights shining, and they were different sizes, but they were as far as like the universe. And then this was incredibly beautiful. Who doesn't want to be there? And then in another journey, one of these lights that were shining in gold shaped itself into a human form, and it touched me in the forehead. And when it touched me is when I said, oh, you are a being of light. Because I had realized myself as a being of light, and now this being was showing me, look, I am like you. Because before I didn't think anything. It just felt good,
Yeah.
beautiful.
And how old were you?
I was
How old were
4 years
you?
old. Four.
4.
And then four. Yes. So by then I was 4 years old, and now if, before I wanted to sleep, imagine now, but it started to give me a sense of peace and calmness, and it was the sense that okay, things are good, and to balance things because otherwise, I mean, come on now, this girl is never going to wake up. Not to balance things, I had after this an experience in which one day I was taking a shower. And then I am taking the shower, relaxed in the bathroom, and then suddenly a blue, intense, shiny light appeared in the bathroom. And this was the very first time that I saw the beings of light or being of light here in the physical, let's call it in this dimension, this 3D and this physical reality. And I saw this blue, intense light in the bathroom. I'm like, now they are here. And later in my life, I understood another thing. And what happened when I started to see this being here, I started to see more and more and more. And now I started to feel the sense that I was at peace here, that I didn't need to go asleep. And later in my life, I started to understand this concept of home is not a place, is not somewhere you have to go, is a state of being, is a state
Yeah.
of consciousness. So of course at that moment I didn't know any of that. I just knew that now I don't have to go sleep. I don't have to go somewhere, because now
Yes.
the beings of light were here and I saw them everywhere. And at the beginning they didn't say anything. Just their presence was enough. And then with their presence I felt like home. Sí, Francisco, ¿tú quieres decir algo o no?
Yeah,
Yeah, he wants to say.
for the audience, how long did it take for that transition to manifest? I mean, the last time that I asked you, you told me that you were age 4. So at what age did those transition took form and until the realization of the most recent one?
Oh, I was still 4 years old. So
All
I
that while
imagine,
you're still 4 years old and you
yeah.
understood all that?
No, oh, to
Wow,
understand. What
that's
do you mean?
impressive.
Oh, to understand the realization of
Yeah.
home and all this? See?
Yes.
Oh no, Francisco, many
Yes.
years, many years. I mean,
Many
Oh,
again,
years, but
okay.
to
Okay.
that's why I say this is a teaching I learned many years later. That, oh
Okay.
gosh, maybe 10 years ago. But at the moment, what I'm meaning is that
Okay.
it was the feeling of it was like that. Like I started to feel that,
Okay.
oh, I don't need to go sleep, I don't need to go anywhere. That's why I mentioned that many years later I understood that that was the beginning of, let's call it, life or awareness trying to give me this teaching.
awakening.
Yeah, that I didn't have to go anywhere. You don't have to
You're,
go.
in other words, you're putting words now to the experience you had, but without words back then. You're putting words of what happened with your
Exactly.
maturity with the time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. The only thing I knew is that I don't have to go sleep now. I'm feeling that same feeling without having to go sleep. And I could see the beings of light
Got it.
everywhere. And I started to feel the sense of I want to play with my sisters. Now I want to eat. Now I want to. So I started to feel good here in my physical body, in my physical reality, but not completely, but it started to feel better. But up to this point, for long time, I again they didn't say anything. It was just presence until they started to communicate with me. Now with even like this is the part where people say how the beings of light talk to you. There's many different ways, because I have felt them telepathically. I have felt them like I almost like hearing with my ears, my physical ears. I have many ways of communication, and by knowing, there's many different ways. But the first time I hear them was like pretty much like I was hearing with my physical ears. And what happened is that they were calling me to eat dinner one night, and that night I threw a big tantrum. And the reason was is because I was very disconnected to my persona still. Like imagine once you go through an experience so deep, so intense, and knowing that you're not this name, you're not this body, was the sense of like it was hard to be in this dress for me. And then I was very detached from my persona, my name. And one night they're calling me to eat dinner. And it happened to me all the time that when they call me Ingrid, I felt the sense that's not my name. That's
Okay.
not my name. And then some days I will get worse than others. And then one day they came to call me, that the lady's like, Ingrid, it's time for dinner. And I wouldn't come. And she came like, Ingrid, that we're calling you. And then I said, don't call me like that. That's not my name. Then,
Oh
of course,
wow.
she's aggravated and she's like, then how should I call you? What is your name? And my answer was, I do not need one. And then, of course, I mean, uh, who can understand this thing? And then they were aggravated and sent me to sleep, like, stop with this thing. And then they sent me to sleep, and I was very angry. And it was the first time I heard a voice, and the voice whispered in my ear, like with complete clarity, but in a very loving, like very peaceful, and at the same time, like it was almost um like if it was kind of like playful. So tell me, it's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light. And of course, at that moment, I'm like, whoa, wow, because you're now hearing voice. And then when I turn, I see that there's a being of light right there. And then this was incredible, a big surprise now to hear voice. And then he says to me, but with the voice, it came the understanding, because it's when I understood, like, oh, I get it. That's why I do not need a name. See that this all these are happening to me was like almost the state of remembering things. Because again, when I am telling you that I knew how to read, how to write, how to develop mathematical problems, all of that, and it kept like evolving more and more and more, my feeling always was I am not learning anything, I'm just remembering.
Ah,
So when
yes.
this moment, even this moment happened, it was like, oh, I remember. And now I feel like I know I'm not crazy. So imagine the relief, because it was this thing, I don't need a name. And then it was very strongly, because I will look at myself in the mirror and cry, and say, that's not my name. And that's why later in life, when people ask me about, oh, what are the names of the beings of light you connect with? Because people call them later, I learned the names angels, ascended masters, I don't know, archangels, guides, all kind of names and stuff. I never needed names, because I met all these beings in the pureness of the light. So I never really needed forms, or I never needed names. And sometimes I could be surrounded by many beings of light, and I didn't need the urge to see them in form. They was just like orbs of light. And incredibly, even though I was not seeing any facial features or anything, when they were talking, I knew who was talking. So this is just, it's hard for the human mind to understand these kind of things, but because we need all this physicality.
Yes.
But
I
once
mean,
we've been able to experience these other realms, these other dimensions, things completely shift in the mind. And maybe the way people can understand that is like when they have a moment of understanding, and the mind just gets clear. And okay, so from here I started to have like deeper clarities. Is when also the beings of light said to me that I was not alone, but and that it was best that I didn't share this with anybody, because they were not going to understand. And I just, for me, was like, but what is not to understand? I mean, like, really, this was the reality I was experiencing. And I, what
Of
is not
course.
to understand? Then the other thing, they said that I was never going to be alone. And this was very important. And they were right, that there was going to be people to guide me and to teach me. And this was so important, because of course, you being a child and being alone was the most difficult things. I felt like I was an alien. I felt that I didn't belong. And the first person that actually validated my experience was my mom. So I was now ready to go to a kindergarten. And when now I was in kindergarten, the beings of light have told me not to talk, but they never told me not to paint. So I kind of like to make the joke about that. And you, as a child, you have to express yourself somehow.
That's what I was going to ask. How did you express this? So you started painting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so I started painting, and I was doing painting beams of light everywhere. So one day the teacher got pretty curious, like, what is going on with this child? They already thought that I was kind of different now, like, so the teacher come and she's like, what are these? Like the sun, the stars? She thought that I don't know. Then I said, no, these are my friends, the beings of light. And it's when the teacher was like, oh,
Uh-oh.
yeah,
You're
she
in
thought that I was
trouble.
imaginary.
Uh-oh, this is a strange girl.
So they called my parents, and when my parents, my mom was the one that came to school, and she's showing all the pictures to the teacher, and it's when they realize, and later we make clarity of this also, that I wasn't just seeing something. My mom at that moment caught it, that, oh, she realized that I was also seeing auras, because all
Okay.
my drawings were like very detailed, painted with auras. And again, this is not something she even mentioned at the moment. When I look at my mom, because they were talking and describing the pictures, I said, Mom, but these are my friends, the beings of light, and these are the colors that we wear, because I just saw that they were trying to understand what was happening. And my mom looked at me with these mom eyes, like, be quiet, because she didn't want me to have trouble, have problem
More
at school.
problems, yes.
Yeah, so she said, like, this is nothing, this is just a stage in her life, we will solve it. And we left, and of course on the way home I was so sad that nobody believed me. And it's when my mom looked at me, and I said that she believed me because she also could see things that others couldn't. And it's
Oh,
and this remind me, Francisco, you, because you talk about your lineage of psychic and mediums in your family. This happened to me too. I
Yes.
and my mom, she confessed that she could see spirits since she was a little child.
well, that was amazing for you, Ingrid, because at least there's somebody that can understand. Wow, that's a
Yes. So now
gift.
my mom said, but she also said the same thing the being so like said. She said you have to remain quiet because people are afraid. They can not understand these things. So now it was also the validation, do not share with anyone. So imagine the heaviness of this in a child, also not be able to express what you are experiencing. So it's like pretty much be quiet. So for many, many, many years I remained silent, yeah, until certain people, certain circumstances will appear that let me explain certain things. But talking about the beings of light, I never did for 40 years
Wow.
because I was told not to. And then even when I started to share about them, I would just, my neck will get red, the words wouldn't come. That's how I knew how difficult it was to express all these, feeling safe when talking to other people. So at that moment, later, something also happened, and is that I didn't know that what my mom and I were seeing was different. And
Oh,
when I was 6 years old, I started to see also spirits. And it was very scary, very scary. It was an experience in which I was petrified in fear of the way I
Jesus, what is this? Yeah.
saw this first spirit, because he didn't appear at all like the being so light. It was to me, the way I saw this spirit, I didn't see the facial features or anything. It was at night. I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a presence. It was a silhouette entering into the bedroom, and it there was a closet that my mom always left with the light on, and this spirit entered into the bedroom and turned off the light of the closet. When turn it off, went into the closet and closed the door. So there was a lot of activity like that in our house at the time, which we didn't feel at the beginning. It just started to. be more present later. But I was petrified in fear, and the moment and when this spirit is entering the room, I felt the personality even of this being, and it wasn't anything pleasant. And when I am thinking, don't see me, I didn't want this being to, I was so scared, but a being of light came next to me, and the moment I saw the being of light, the peace came. And it's when I stood up and I ran, and my mom was already up. It was very early in the morning, and I told my mom what I had seen. And I said, Mom, the beings of light and the spirits are not the same. And I was expecting to hear from my mom. I didn't know what to expect, and it's when my mom say, "Explain, explain." And when I explained to my mom what I have seen, and the difference, and she started to ask me to explain more what the beings of light look and how, because now I am 6, so now I have a language that
And
can
language.
explain things with more clarity. And then my mom started crying, and then she cries because she say, I think you see angels. But of course, the reason I didn't understand them as angels is because I grew up as Catholic, and for me, angels that I seen in pictures and everything had wings.
Exactly. They were different.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I said to my mom, but they cannot be angels because they don't have wings. And then my mom said, but she could not think about anything else. They have to be angels because if they're the goodness, the light, so they had to be angels. And then so she taught me how to pray and how to just stay connected with the
Oh,
light,
that's
not
nice.
be afraid of the spirits. But this was the other thing, because I already been talking to the beings of light for long time now. I asked them first, what is with these spirits? And I call them dark spirits, not because they were bad, but because they caused me fear. And then when I asked, the answer was incredible, because the being so light said to me, that you call spirits, you, us, in essence, we are the same.
Exactly.
And they said the difference is the
Exactly.
level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. And then for me to get clarity, they said, look, when they are so attached to this physical reality, to the matters of the world, then they get lost because they leave this body, but they don't know it. And they think that they're still here. So they get trapped in this physical dimension, to say something. And that's how we see as a spirit. And then they said, but once, and he said, but people like you can help them,
Can help them. Yeah.
can help them remember who they are. So that was absolutely beautiful, because it's when I got the understanding nothing is really bad. There's just confusion. They just lost. And
Mhm.
then the other thing they told me when I said, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? And it came this amazing answer, because they said to me, we are what you want us to be. So, oh my,
Very
I just
interesting.
thought that that was the most incredible. That was something that never left my mind, because it was the understanding that's how compassionate the universe is.
And what you need us to be. Yeah.
Yeah, it manifests to us in the way that we need it for our evolution, for awareness. And if
Right. Right.
somebody is very afraid, they're not going to manifest like that at all. And later we can talk in another episode about all the different ways in which the light, the beings of light, can manifest to us, and we will not even realize that they are here,
Right.
because again they manifest to us in the way we can deal with it, understand it, because it's for the benefit of our growth and evolution. So that was all that happened growing up with all these, like we already talked before, was very hard. I felt very isolated. I felt very lonely. But the next person that appeared in my life and opened deeper, deeper doors for me and Ceci and Francisco was my father, mother. My grandmother was essential in my path because she introduced a spirituality in my life. Because I
Okay.
say, at the end of the day, experiences are experiences. And if we can stay with experiences that we even don't understand, or it can be just one more experience, but what? Where does it take you? But my grandmother, she was raised as Catholic, but she was a very inquisitive lady. And she, since she was very little, she always had the questioning of feeling and knowing that we were more. And when she grew up, she was very rebellious. She joined a Rosicrucian order. And later she started to learn about Hinduism, Buddhism, Kabbalah, the chakras, everything. And she came to our house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she was living in Venezuela. That's why she didn't come very often. And she came to visit one time. She's talking about all this stuff. And I look at her and I'm like, Grandma talks like the beings of light.
Wow.
The beings of light were giving me so many teachings. And then is when I just started to listen to her. And when she taught me how to meditate when I was 8 years old.
An intensive course you received from her.
And when she taught me the Om, guys, the first time I repeated the Om and I went to sleep that night, I had what we know today. Again, I didn't know what just happened back then, but later understanding what happened, I had my first Kundalini experience.
Oh,
For
wow.
people to understand what this is, I felt the movement of the energy in my whole body, and it shook my entire body. I didn't know what happened, and it came with sound and it came with light, and I just did not know what happened. And when I asked what just was happening, the being so light said, ask your grandma. So grandma was incredible. By the age of 9, imagine I was already reading books like the Bhagavad Gita, books of self realization, books of discernment. My grandmother realized that, oh, she's a special child and she's bringing all this stuff to me.
Wow.
And
Wow.
talking about a special, I want to say something because this answer also your question. And I always say, why me?
Yeah.
Why this is happening to me? And I will cry because I compare myself with other children, of course. And I would say, why I'm not like everybody
Why
else,
am
or
I so different?
why, yeah. And then I remember one time crying and saying, asking the being, so like, why me, why this is happening to me? And the answer was amazing. They said, because you are special. And then of course I said, what do you mean when you say that I am special? I didn't want to be special. What do you mean when you say that I am special? Oh, and the answer was even more beautiful. They say everybody is special, but not everybody knows it yet. They say you are beginning to know. Again, it took me many years to understand what the heck they were talking about. So it was a process of, and my grandmother, I started to talk to her and all this reading and unraveling things. So it helped so
Did you
much.
tell your story to your grandmother? No,
Yeah,
really.
they knew about the drowning and everything, but I
Okay.
was told by the beings of light not to share about
Not
them.
to talk about that. Okay.
So other than my mom knowing that I could see things, nobody else knew.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was very clear about not to talk. So this is the other thing when I want to make something clear when people ask me, who are these beings of light? Are they good? How you know? Because people always have this feeling of like, "Ah, this is an evil thing. What the heck? What are these beings?" And nowadays I have this deep clarity. Again, in one way, these beings, I would just say, saved my life, have given me enormous teachings. These have been They have been a beings of compassion, love, presence, understanding. But for people to know with deeper clarity, since I was very little, they said to me, don't believe what we say, experience it yourself. So they were not there to brainwash me or to obligate me to do anything or to impose anything. We have free will, and there's never going to be intervention in the sense that it will stop our free will. They
Right.
were there only to guide. So with this, I tell people, if any being that you meet in your life, any guru, any teacher, any guide, any master, that come and say, I am your master, I
Your
am the
guru.
one, your guru, I say run, and run fast,
Yes. Okay.
because a true teacher will guide you within, will guide you to look within, to find
That's
your
great, Ingrid. I'm glad you're sharing that. That's so important.
yes. They will guide you to find that you are the guru of your own temple. Nothing is outside ourselves. So that's why the being so light since I was little. Go experience, go do it yourself. So that was that, and there's so much more to talk, but I don't want to make this too long. And maybe what I can share now is, and I will go quicker, is that later in my life, when I just felt that I was deviating a little bit from the path, because it happened that I wanted to be like everybody else. There was moments in my,
Normal.
oh my
Normal.
God, I wanted to be normal. I wanted to fit in. And you know what, Anna? And as I said, many years later, again, I always have to say many years later, I received a clarity from the beings of light when I said I wanted to be normal. They said to me, no, you did not want to be normal. You wanted to belong. To belong. What is the biggest yearning that we have as
Yeah,
humans? We want
that's
to
right.
belong.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
you
Yeah.
want to be loved. Belonging is the sense of love. And then of course it was very hard, because for many years I felt like I was an alien, that I didn't belong. And then yeah, there was a time where I don't think we have time today, but we can talk other day, that I even cut my relationship with the beings of life, feeling that sense that I wanted to just be connected to people and be normal. And when this was happening, there was a moment, I was now 24 years old, and I was living in an island in the Caribbean. And is when I had my second near death experience. That kind of, I say that I was kind of derailed at that moment, because my wanting or my yearning to be normal, to fit in, brought me to, again, look my change my focus of attention and go back to look in the outer reality too much. And then I had this second near death experience, in which I had a motorcycle accident. And in this motorcycle accident, I went back to experience the realm of the light. And when the accident happened, it was the motorcycle fell down. But let me tell you that I not just me, but I have heard this in other people that have had this kind of experiences. And is that even before the motorcycle fell, I was already out of the body. So
Yeah.
during this experience, it was for me the understanding, the clarity that the pain did not belong to the body. Sorry, the pain belonged to the body. That pain was,
Not
yeah,
your
that
spirit, your soul.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. My soul was free from everything. And again, like in the first near death experience, it was the sense of, in the moment I was in the bike, I was having a moment of panicking. I was new riding motorcycles, and I was a little nervous. And there was a moment in which I'm going up of a hill, and I'm in a lot of tension, stress. So again, it was passing from a moment of being in the horror of, can I am I going to fall, am I not doing something right, and I lost the balance of the bike. I fell, I don't even know how this happened, and suddenly that whole terror, the whole feeling of, again, this reality as it vanished, and I was back home. And the feeling of being home. Yeah, dime, Ana.
So I was going to tell you something that I've heard many times, and you're with this, you're confirming it. That sometimes when we think a lot about the pain and the hurt and all this when people pass, but I've heard this basically in children. This is for people and for the audience to know. This is not the first time. I was one of those that when there's going to be an accident or there's going to be like a shock or a child being abused, all these things, what happens is that you get away from that body, and then that's not something that your soul takes with you, because not even the pain, the hurt, the that thing, you're that's the last thing you remember when you're in another realm. That doesn't even happen. The pain, and you said it, the sickness, the pain, and all the hurt stays with the body, but you were already out before even the accident happened. So this is not the first time I've heard about that. I just wanted to clear that out, that this is something for people to stop thinking about all the pain and hurt when we're spiritual bodies, and that doesn't really stay with you at all.
Yes, 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 Anna, because and I'm glad you're here to even validate it, to validate this, because that's how it happened for me. And again, even before the bike fell, I was already in the state of standing in the middle of the road like peace, and I am already at home again, and there's no pain, and there is not fear. And I think that's the thing that I have to uh, pinpoint the most,
Reinforce.
is that there was not fear. So that was an enormous relief, because from the first near death experience, I already have lost the fear of death. And now dying, having a second near death experience, with like, whoa, this is, I am back. I have to say a couple of things about these experiences, because they were very different, and they carry very different messages. And the first near death experience, when I asked the beings of light again, many years later, I asked them, like, why my first experience happened when I was so little. And is when they said to me, listen to this, because this is incredible. They said, your first experience, your first NDE happened when you were so little, because you were old enough to remember, but young enough not to be conditioned yet.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so I could bring the experience with a pure mind. Imagine the child of 2 years old. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even have concept of love, a concept of God, none of that. I didn't have concepts. But when I experience, and now I can bring it with these words again, like putting words into experiences. When I went also into that realm of the light, where I was whole, it was also, now I know the word God. When I say I was at home, I was embraced. But my father, my mother, my wholeness, my everything. I feel the sense that I was like, if you could just put the baby in the hands of the mom and the dad, and the baby completely disappear. And it forgets that it's himself, and fused with. That was when I felt the sense of dissolving, the sense of interconnectedness, the sense, the baby when it's in the arms of the mom and is so warm, and drinking the milk, it forgets himself. That's how I felt. Imagine that, now talk about love. Wow, I was in the arms of love. And you know how I call it? I call it like a cotton candy embrace, because it's that sweet, it's that delicious, it's that
I like that.
incredible. It is how. So that's, now I can put words, but back then it was just all these
Yeah.
as a feeling. So coming back, of course I had to be depressed, and because I never felt it again. And then now the motorcycle accident, wow, feeling again the sense of being at home. And for the first experience, the message was, and again it was a message that I was able to unpack many years later. They said that I came to bring the message of the power of connection. And when I try to understand what does it mean, the power of connection in the experience, they said, yes, look what happened when you went to the maid room. I even mentioned her. I said, oh, that's Maria. Nothing happened. Why? Because there was no connection with Maria. And on top of that, she was a person that mistreated us. So what happened? No love. What happened the moment I met my mom? Look, the person that was the closest in distance, only few feet away, could
There was
not
no connection. Yeah.
happen. My mom, that was I don't know how many blocks away from home, she was the one that was able to know what was happening. Connection,
Because you were very connected. Yeah.
because love doesn't have barriers. That's why I say love is the answer to absolutely everything.
Yeah.
So my mom knew exactly where to go. She phoned me in the tank. She got me out. So it's when the being so light said to me, look, when there is no love, when there is no connection, there is division. There is separation. When there is no connection, they will let you drown. So
Wow.
all as the
Very
symbology
true.
of this drowning. And a couple of more things that bring symbology to the first near death that I had is like, and I love when Francisco and Joanna talk about near death and death experience. This is another thing that I was able to see with clarity. In my first experience, I could say that I don't even call it near death.
It was
Like you
dead.
don't yeah, like you don't call yours near death. I died. I
Yeah.
died
There
because now
was
Yeah.
nothing connected there. Yeah.
yeah, because now I knew the difference. I have had the three near death experiences, or three experiences of dying. The first one I said I died, and the difference is the other two were nothing like the first one. They were very different. And the second one, it was more realization, I am here, the scene, the body, it was completely different. And the message for the second one was oh sí, Francisco, dime.
Yes, I actually can validate that because I am kind of a rebel in that sense. I don't like the word near death experience to be taken when someone died, because when someone died is a totally different experience.
They
And I can
died,
validate
period.
that because in 1979 I died. But in the year 2002 I had a near death experience. Practically you go to the same place but in a different state.
Yeah.
So there is a big difference. And I agree 100% with you.
Hmm. So I am glad that we're able to, just by sharing all these experiences, to bring even more clarity and more clarity to the
Yes.
table.
Yeah.
And then I am not going to, but I have to say that I don't want to go too long, but with the second one, the message was to be able to help people that have had these kind of tragic accidents, to make peace with themselves. Because people will come and ask me like, please, Ingrid, tell me if my loved one or my daughter or my son or whoever, like if they suffer when they died in this tragic accident. And it's like we were saying, it's not just my case, but many cases in which even before the accident, I was already outside my body experiencing absolute peace, no fear. I know that there's also experiencers that have had let's call it challenging experiences, or some call it dark, or some call it negative. I just think everything is just experience, but it all depends of your state of consciousness, where you are at with yourself, where you are at with knowing who you are, where you are at with your, let's call it, everything is cause and effect. Where you are at are your level of
And
consciousness evolution.
and also, Ingrid, the fact that the thing that you said just before, you're sort of deviating yourself, trying to be normal, trying to be, and then these experiences, as difficult or whatever, they just bring awareness again and tell Ingrid, just remember who you are, because that's what happened. I mean, this accident, it was a terrible accident, but wait, I got so much good out of it. So then it was not precisely something negative. It just reminds you, okay, remember, Ingrid, here we are. So I think that was beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. And then, wow, I think that we're running out of time, so we can make later like another maybe episode in which the three of us will talk about our other near their experiences. But I will just touch in the last one pretty quick, just because you talk about the depression thing, and I have
Yes.
like I have to say that when I was 39 years old, so when I had the motorcycle accident, I was 24. And when I had what I call a big awakening, I was between 39 and 40 years old. And because it was a time also of like waking up, and I had this big awakening. But there was a time in my life, 20 years pretty much, where I there was a day when I had let's call it a mystical experience, in which I experienced the light but with my eyes open. I was sitting in a bus feeling like I always felt like I was just an observer. I was just a visitor here. And I said to the being, so like, I wish none of this was real. And it's when I entered into the realm of the light with my eyes open, and I heard nothing is what it appears to be. And then I am back, and I said, when did we stop being one with the whole, and how is it possible to forget who we truly are?
Yeah.
At that moment, I was very conflicted within myself. I felt like I was a victim, and I asked why me, and I was depressed, and there was very a lot of hardship. I wanted to be normal. So it's when the being so like asked me if I wanted to someday teach what I was experiencing, and I said I will never teach anything. And then is
And
when
look at you now.
yeah, and it's also when they and I yeah, I just like I no. And at that moment, I also picked my career here as a marine scientist. Why? Why I pick a career as a scientist? I needed to ground. So
And in the water.
and what? Yeah, talk about that. When people ask me, how could you become a marine scientist, a marine biologist? I am an oceanographer too, as my PhD. And when I hear this, I laugh, because I said, because people say you should be really afraid of water because you drown. And I said,
Right.
no,
Right.
what happened is that drowning brought me to see the light.
Right.
So that's what happened with this part of my experience. But I said that I didn't want to teach anything, and the being so light said to me that in 20 years this will happen. In 20 years I will have the clarity. So imagine, I was 19 when I heard this. And then time passed, I forgot about the 20 years, and I had what I call a big awakening. But even with this awakening, even with all these processes of peeling the layers and waking up and all the stuff, I that depression never left me. I always wanted to go back home. I always wanted to go
Yeah.
back to that embrace, to that love. And then it took me a third near death experience to actually finally realize that
Oh, wow.
home was not a place but a state of being. But I think we probably leave that one for another episode, because is this one already too long and I don't want to go to the.
I think we all have several episodes to, I mean, several experiences that we are gonna maybe together. One of us, each one of us will share, because I also have my last one that I have not shared. Francisco has his own experience, and you too. So we'll leave the best for the last. And yes, Ingrid,
Yes.
this has absolutely been amazing, amazing. I think we've learned a lot of more details, and I love that we are spending this time with each one of us, because we're not only learning a lot from each other, but we're letting people learn a lot of the details that are behind every single experience. There's a lot. So we're giving ourselves the time to share it with you. And I'm so happy we're all here sharing with this. What do you think, Francisco?
Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I want to add, reinforce what you just said and add that these are our first videos for the audience to know us better, to know
Yes,
our background, where we come from, and our experiences and what came out of those experiences. Because now, moving forward, we are going to start answering questions, go into details, and that's why I want to invite the audience. Now that you know our story, now I want you guys to start asking questions, because the purpose of these podcasts are to help you answer those questions that you have not yet found answers,
right.
because this world is full of answers and a lot of knowledge, but unfortunately very little wisdom, and
Yeah,
wisdom comes with
Wow.
experience. So if we
Yeah,
can
that's right.
bring that wisdom with our experiences from that spirit world that very few people really know, but people read a lot about what's out there. A lot of us need clarity and answers. So if you ask the question, we will answer the best we can to bring you clarity. And that's what we
Right.
want, because once you start asking that question, someone else is going to get the answer. So by you asking the question, you're not helping yourself only, but you're helping others,
yeah,
because we can bring the question that we might think that you might have, but not necessarily the one you really have burning deep inside you that no one have been able to answer. So please, I invite you guys to start asking questions. Write them down, send them to our page. Ask those questions. We're gonna gather them together and start answering one by one, little by little. Your answer will be answered. Your question will be answered. Trust me, it will. And another thing is what I keep saying, and I will keep repeating over and over again. Don't keep us as a secret. We are not your secret. We are not here to talk to you. We're here to talk to humanity. So help us, help yourself, help others, because at the end of the day, we're one. So let's put into practice that knowledge. Do yourself a favor, for yourself and for others. Ask questions and share this with everyone else. That's what we're asking from you. That's all we're asking, nothing else.
And I
Okay?
love this quote that says,
So those are
sharing.
my N words.
That's beautiful, Francisco. And I love this quote, sharing is caring. If you
yeah.
care, share.
It is.
That's it. Well,
Um,
Ingrid, we're very grateful. This
It
was
is.
beautiful. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. Ingrid, you want to say some last words? Otherwise, we'll just saying goodbye to everybody.
oh no, thank you all for connecting with us, and we will, like Francisco said, keep answering questions and engaging with all of you. So go to make comments there in the YouTube channel and ask your questions, and see you
We'll
next
answer.
time.
will
Yeah.
sure answer. So remember, in dying, I began to live. Be with us, stay touch, stay in touch, follow us, and please share. Thank you, everybody. For now,
Thank
we're
you.
Thank
going.
you.
Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Bye. Mhm.
Bye.